Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Moving to Canada. It's being put on by the Expat Land Global Network, a wonderful network of leading service providers in key cities around the world. It focuses on providing services to expats who are relocating, and it provides local in-country expertise to ease the transition and the move for companies or their employees or individuals and family members. It's a wonderful network. I suggest you look at the different cities that are covered on the website and make great use of it. We are, in essence, the Canadian team here today, and we're going to provide this webinar. The format will be 6 key topics related to moving to Canada: relocation, immigration, taxation, wealth management, mortgages, and moving. We have an expert speaker to discuss each of these topics for approximately 5 minutes. At the very end, we'll have a Q&A. You can enter your questions and we'd be happy to address them. And the total webinar should be approximately 40 minutes. It is my pleasure to introduce our expert speakers today, each of whom is a member of Expat Land. First up will be Nitin Badwar, Vice President of Welcome Relocations, Inc. He's a seasoned veteran in assisting clients in all aspects of coming to Canada with relocation services. I will then speak on immigration matters. I am a Canadian immigration lawyer and the managing partner of Canada's foremost immigration law firm. After myself, Spence Walker, an accountant, will speak, one of the leading cross-border accountants in Canada. He's the managing partner of Creston GTA, and he'll speak on tax issues and tax planning. He'll be followed by Maymar Naiman, a portfolio manager and wealth advisor at RBC Dominion Securities. That is the wealth management arm of the Royal Bank of Canada, our largest bank. He'll speak on wealth management topics. Next will be Mohammed Manzoor, who will speak on mortgages and borrowing and credit issues. He's the president of the Canada Mortgage Group. And finally, Fran Roy will speak, the director of corporate development at King's Transfer Van Lines. And she'll speak about the topic of moving issues for relocating to Canada. So let's kick it off, Nitin, with the relocation issues. I'd ask you speak to them for several minutes, and then I'll ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. As Andrew said, we have 5 minutes each, so I'm going to go really fast. If we could get to the first slide, there we go. I thought give you a quick Canada overview. Canada is the second largest country in the world with a population, however, of only 38.5 million. And it's made up of 10 provinces and 3 territories. We share the longest land border in the world with the USA, and the country spans 6 time zones. While being an independent nation, we are a dominion of the United Kingdom, so the head of the country is the British monarch. Capital of Canada is Ottawa, and the largest city and financial capital is Toronto, with a population of about 6.8 million. Canada has 2 official languages, English and French, and is one of the most culturally diverse and inclusive nations in the world. To demonstrate, gay marriage was legalized in Canada in 2005, and it's very culturally diverse. The currency used in Canada is the Canadian dollar, currently trading at approximately 80 cents US, but of course can fluctuate here and there. In Canada, we officially use the metric system, but you won't actually find anybody using meters and centimeters. We tend to use feet, yards, inches, and a hybrid of various different systems. We drive on the right-hand side of the road, and speed is displayed in kilometers an hour. Although when you ask somebody how far something is, it's always never in kilometers. It'll take you 2 hours to get there. Income and sales taxes can be very high in Canada, as are cellular and internet fees. I think it's important that people realize that there isn't sticker shock when you actually get here. Ticketed price on goods does not typically include sales taxes, so you always pay higher than the ticketed price. Canada's official sports are ice hockey and lacrosse. And Canada is very supportive. As I said, with a population of about 38.5 million, we're very supportive and in fact, even dependent on immigration for both economic investment and to fill skills and talent gaps. So let's get to Toronto specifically, because that's really what we're here to cover off. Toronto is one of the most multicultural and cosmopolitan cities in the world and is recognized as the most diverse city in the world. The Toronto Gay Pride and Caravana festivals are among the largest in the world. And Toronto is a center for the arts, culture, fine dining, major league sports teams, music, and entertainment. This diversity allows one to enjoy different cultures, neighborhoods, and mind-blowing food and culinary choices and experiences. It's a great place to live, visit, and work. However, Toronto is also a very expensive city, and the cost of living can be high. Currently, housing costs are the second highest in the country, just lagging behind Vancouver. The average home price is now over $1.1 million. Rental housing rates are also very high. A one-bedroom goes for anywhere from $1,600 to $2,600 a month. A two-bedroom, $2,400 to $3,450, $3,500 a month. So again, you need to be aware of these issues. Auto insurance rates are the most expensive in all of Canada in Toronto, as are cell phone and internet rates as well. Toronto, however, does have a great transit system and infrastructure. Public education is free to all up to grade 11, and there are also private and faith-based and international baccalaureate school options available, which are important to a lot of expats, the international baccalaureate, because that way they work on the same curriculum as different international baccalaureate schools across the world. So you don't have to worry about your children falling behind or being out of sync when you move again, or should you move again. Toronto is home to the Toronto Maple Leafs in hockey, the Blue Jays in baseball, the Argos in football, Raptors in basketball, and the Toronto FC for soccer. So it has a lot to offer. Like I said, in a very quick nutshell, Toronto is a great place to be. You will enjoy being here. It is extremely multicultural. However, before we at Welcome Home Relocations get you in terms of having you needing our services, it's really, really important to go through a checklist of what you first need to do in order. The biggest things would be, obviously, you have to look into the immigration services in terms of work permits, permanent residency, visitor visas. The vaccination status is still important when coming to Canada. It may be removed in time, but at the current time, it is still a major consideration. Tax considerations and implications are also very, very important. You need to then worry about your social insurance number, because without a social insurance number, you cannot be paid. Driver's license, health insurance, that's a biggie. Rental housing, obviously, banking and investing, real estate ownership, as well as household goods moving. So there are a myriad of considerations that you need to go through when looking to move to Toronto. But that's why we at Expatland and we at the Toronto E-Team are here for everybody to provide you with the expertise for when you decide you want to make that move. So having said that, I will now pass it back to Andrew, who will then take you through the immigration piece.
I will, Nitin. Before we do that, so I understand your organization eases everything along on all of these issues for clients, but I wanted to ask about healthcare, because for many people coming to Canada, it's a central focus. Can you speak a little bit about healthcare for immigrants?
Absolutely. So the good news for people coming to Ontario, there used to be a 90-day wait period to get your Ontario health insurance. That has now been waived, and as long as you are legally allowed to live and work in Canada or in Ontario, you now fully qualify for Ontario health insurance. That's where a company such as ours comes into play, and we can help you get that. We do, however, recommend that you still arrange for private insurance, or if you're coming with an employer, that your employer arranges for private insurance for at least the first couple of weeks, because there is a lag in getting not so much approved, but processed. So, arrange for private insurance just in case something goes wrong in those first couple of weeks of being here.
Fantastic, Nitin. Very helpful. And I'll add that our healthcare system I consider world-class, and it's a real strength of our country.
Absolutely.
So following up on some of your thoughts, I'm going to speak briefly on immigration. And I guess I should say Canada is a country built on immigrants and on immigration. And as you mentioned, it's culturally diverse and it's highly desirable, politically stable, great open space and resources. And we need immigration to sustain our Canadian economy and to grow it. It's a focus of our country. In fact, our federal government has a stated goal of 1.5 million immigrants over the next 3 years. And so you can understand that as you look globally, Canada is a welcoming country. We want you here. Especially after 2 years of delays through COVID, we are reopening and ready for business. When we talk about moving to Canada, we're generally talking about either temporarily with a work permit or to study, or permanently to become a permanent resident. And that permanent resident status is sort of our version of a green card you might think of for the United States. It gives you the right to live here indefinitely. If you're to become a permanent resident of Canada, after 3 years of living here, you can become a Canadian citizen. And you should note Canada recognizes dual citizenship. The system is very friendly. If you come, your spouse or children 21 or under get status also. If you come on a work permit, your spouse gets an open work permit, your children get study permits. If you become a permanent resident, your spouse and your children get permanent residency. It's meant to be a facilitative system. There are 3 basic approaches to permanent residency, which is typically the goal for people when they look at Canada. The first is called express entry. It is our main system, and it is a points-based system. You register a profile online with the Canadian government, and you get points for language skills, English or French, for age, younger is better, education, work experience, and you go into a pool of people. And periodically there are draws for people around the world, and they are ultimately offered permanent residency in Canada based on their credentials. In addition to that, each of our provinces have provincial immigration programs, generally for investors or entrepreneurs, and they allow people to come and get permanent residency. And finally, there is family sponsorship. If you had a parent or a child or a spouse that was Canadian, they can bring you over to Canada. With our clients, we normally would do an assessment to see where you fit in the system. And if you don't make it initially on the points-based system, look at how do you get more points? Studying in Canada, coming and getting a work permit and working in Canada. How can you work our immigration system to successfully be invited to become a permanent resident? Spence, I'd ask that maybe you ask me a question or two on immigration that you would see from your clients.
Thanks, Andrew. So one of the questions I had is, what are some of the common barriers to immigration?
Well, in terms of getting points in our points-based system, language skills is common. If you need to have generally good working English or French, there are medical barriers. When you come to Canada, as Nitin mentioned, you get health insurance. If you have a medical issue, you or a family member that is going to be prohibitively expensive, that can prohibit it. Or if you have a criminal record in your home country or elsewhere in the world that has to be disclosed, and if it's serious criminality, that may bar you from immigrating to Canada.
Understood. And another one I have here is, what are some of the financial requirements from an immigration perspective?
Well, they're quite nominal. If you're invited to become a permanent resident of Canada, you have to show you have a certain amount of funds to get yourself started in Canada. For instance, for a couple, it's about 16,000 Canadian, and then it's about an extra 3,500 Canadian for each child. So it's substantial, but it's not overwhelming. It's something that with proper planning, most people can meet, Spence.
Oh, thanks for that. Okay.
The next logical topic is taxation, Spence, and I'd like to move over to yourself to talk about some of the key tax issues people would face coming to Canada.
Sure, thanks for that, Andrew. So as mentioned, my name's Spence Walker. I'm a partner at Creston GTA, and Creston is a member firm of Creston Global, which is a network of accounting firms around the world. And our firm represents the Greater Toronto area. So I wanted to talk about some of the key considerations from a tax perspective that one might consider if they are planning on moving here or setting up a business here. The first is the concept of tax residency. So in Canada, moving to Canada may entail becoming a Canadian resident for tax purposes or becoming a deemed resident for tax purposes. Now, this is a designation that's independent from citizenship or landed immigration status. So it's very important to understand what are the various factors that could trigger this. In Canada, we have what's called a residence-based income tax system. And this is quite different from territorial-based systems that you might find in regions like Hong Kong or Singapore. In a territorial-based system, residents are taxed only on the income where it is earned. However, in Canada, residents pay taxes on their global income, no matter where they earned it. So, for example, if someone is considered a deemed resident in Canada and they have business interests in Hong Kong, they could end up paying Canadian taxes on that Hong Kong income. But Canada has tax treaties with Hong Kong, Singapore, mainland China, and several other countries. And this helps to limit the risk of double taxation. So the Canadian resident will generally pay the higher rate of tax between the two countries. And another important consideration is what we call the 183-day rule. This applies to anyone who spends more than half a year, or the 183 days, in Canada. And that's regardless of whether or not you might actually live here. At that time, or at that point, you may become a deemed resident for tax purposes. But even considering that, someone who remains in Canada for less than 183 days may also become a deemed resident if there's other facts that come into play, such as you might own real estate here, you might have a spouse or other dependents, and a number of other factors. So it is important that you're communicating with a Canadian accountant ahead of time to help determine when in fact you become a Canadian resident for tax purposes. As is with respect to foreign held assets or assets that you likely hold in your home country that you're moving from. And so moving to Canada means disclosing certain foreign assets. This is something that some people may find unsettling, and that's perhaps due to the misconception that they're going to be taxed on these assets on their arrival. But declaring the fair value of assets actually means that the Canadian government won't have to estimate that fair value in the future. And so there's no tax on the value of assets when you enter into Canada. But it is important to determine what the fair value of these assets are when you arrive in Canada. And this has become, because that becomes your cost base in determining any future gains when sold. So only the increase in value after you enter Canada will be taxed when sold. And it's important to disclose this because not fully disclosing so can result in some significant fines from Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, and could also result in CRA treating the asset as though it was acquired while in Canada. And this could trigger additional taxes or audits. So it's very important to disclose this information to your accountant so that they can accurately disclose this in tax returns to CRA each year. So just here, I want to just talk generally about tax rates, most specifically to individuals. And so in Canada, we have what's called a progressive tax system. So as taxable income increases, the tax rate increases as well. And there's 5 different brackets that we call them federally, and each province has their own tax brackets as well. So your example in the first tax bracket is taxed at the lowest rate, and then income in the next marginal bracket is taxed at a higher rate, and so on and so on. And this can be exhibited in the table here on the right. And here we're assuming that you're a taxable resident in Ontario. And so on the first 44,740, you'd be paying tax at a 20.05 rate. And then The next amount of $3,795 is taxed to 24.15% rate, and so on and so on, so that the total or effective tax on that 75,000 would be 15,204.
Got it. Spence, that's fantastic. So I guess Canada is sort of a high tax rate jurisdiction, but we get healthcare and other services. Would you say that?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that are covered there. And there are also, if you incorporate a business, there's some very favorable low rates of tax for small businesses.
Great. Sounds like pre-planning then, if you're coming to Canada, would be critical.
Absolutely.
And if you bring assets, you're moving to Canada now, you're going to bring assets. You've got currency or you've got other assets. Is there an actual tax on just bringing them to Canada?
No, so you can bring any funds that have already been taxed in your home jurisdiction can be brought over to Canada tax-free. Now, as I mentioned before, if you were to sell a property overseas or sell some stocks overseas, you'd first have to pay taxes on those gains. But the subsequent moving or transferring of the funds over is not taxed additionally.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Spence. That was very informative. Let's move along to what we call wealth management. Maymar, can I ask that you speak to that from a Canadian perspective, please?
Absolutely, Andrew, and thank you very much. So actually, to just take on what Spence is saying, now that you've moved your assets over to Canada, then you'd want to do something with it and invest it. And because we have such a tax system that you need a wealth manager to really funnel through all the different areas. And you'll see that on the next slide, when you become an RBC Dominion Securities clients, of which is under the RBC Bank umbrella, the largest Canadian bank, we look at all the different areas of investing. So first we start with investing, but financial planning and taxation on the left and right, you see is a big component of the wealth management in Canada. And therefore we look at also retirement planning, charitable giving, estate planning, which is another tax that occurs when someone passes away that we have to also consider. We work with your partners, including your tax lawyers and accountants. We would work together to build a very comprehensive plan. We look at insurance planning, and we also help you with any banking needs like credits, lending for your business and or personal. So we look at everything, and then you'll notice that while doing so, we actually have our own in-house financial planners that are generally also CFA or CPA licensed, will and estate consultations, which are lawyers that are in-house within RBC, and insurance consultants. They don't overlap with your existing lawyers and accountants. We just work together looking at a very comprehensive plan and make sure that essentially everything is aligned so that the income that you're producing and the preservation and the inheritance all work together based on your needs. One of the main things we also do is the investment management. We are also the largest Canadian brokerage firm, and we use multi-assets, multi-manager that basically are very diversified. We manage your risk. We use world-class money managers that are institutional money managers that are contracted with RBC Dominion Securities. We get you the best in class. We leverage the RBC due diligence team to ensure that all the managers and investments have passed through our very comprehensive due diligence to ensure the risk and return of these portfolios. And therefore, we put it all together into one account and provide you with a strategy from the planning, from the investments, banking, and insurance, all in one place.
Fantastic, Maymar. That's a great summary. Let me ask you, for people coming to Canada, what are the onboarding or what sort of documentation is necessary to open an account? And does RBC sort of have special programs put in place for immigrants? I mean, do you welcome these sort of clients?
Yeah, so on the banking side, we do have new immigrant programs to open up accounts. Sometimes it does get I wouldn't say difficult, but you need that guidance and help to open up bank accounts in Canada. You would need to essentially have, obviously you need the social insurance number to open up a bank account, and a photo ID of either a Canadian driver's license or a passport. So we do have those programs for new immigrants or new people coming to Canada. And then on the investment side is where we come in and then actually invest the assets in that way. Yeah.
Fantastic. And people can transfer assets from abroad into your wealth management accounts at RBC.
Exactly. So we would open up the accounts here, then they would wire it from their banking institution to here, and it would come through.
Wonderful. Well, much appreciated. And I think when we talk about wealth management in Canada for Canadians, home ownership is often one of our largest pieces of wealth, and it leads naturally into mortgages. And Mohammed, I'd ask that you speak to it because many people coming to Canada, for us as immigration lawyers, one of their first questions is, can I bring my credit with me? How do I buy a home? How do I establish my family? And if you could speak to the mortgage issues and related issues, that'd be wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. So yes, that's true. A little bit about the company, Canadian Mortgage Group. It's been established since 2004. We are independent mortgage brokerage, and we have a team of about 70 experienced agents that will work with you to help to tailor make the financial situation for you. Again, we work with all the banks. There's credit unions, there's insurance companies, there's several options, and when you're coming in, so we try to make it like a one-stop destination for all your mortgage kind of needs, right? The key things that are very focused here in Canada is the first thing is they look at is the credit and then how you fit in and the credit score. So we also work with a lot of clients to build their credit and show them how to get credit cards and establish that. And the two main agencies that are utilized in Canada are the TransUnion and Equifax. So certain banks will accept credit histories from other parts of the country as well. If there is no credit history, then they may consider looking at few other options, sometimes your utility bills and how you pay them. And so that develops some of the credit history as well. And the key focus when you trying to get a mortgage are the three things: credit, down payment, and income. And as I was mentioning earlier, there's traditionally, A banks, B banks, and then private lending options. So the key difference between the A banks, B banks is the difference in the interest rates and the possible down payment. Everyone is looking to put as least amount of money down, but sometimes there's options with more money down. And we can get more into that as we connect with you and describe the different options with that. This is just an example. If we had a mortgage for $800,000, the difference between an A lender, B lender, and private. A lenders will accept as minimum as 5% down, and then if the rates are, give you an idea what the rates, let's say 3%, then your monthly payments work out to about $3,800. With a B lender, traditionally they want a minimum of 20% down payment, and so then with a 5% rate, they're a little bit higher, and their payments work out to $4,650. And then finally, private side of things, with a down payment of $200,000, with a higher rate, your payments are $5,600. So when you're buying a property in Canada, every time there's a transaction, there is land transfer tax. Usually ranges between 1% to 2%, depending on the area you're in. And if there's any real estate fees, they're payable by the sellers. And again, legal fees, both the purchaser and seller will require a lawyer to complete the transaction.
Let me ask you a question. With your clients that move to Canada, if they want to buy a home, do you generally suggest they wait a year or two to build credit and have income verification, or are they ready to go off the top and just larger down payments? Is there any sort of general advice in that area?
Yes, so it depends if the clients are coming in already and they have a job set up, some are relocating, then they can right away get into a mortgage situation. They may have the down payment. Sometimes we assist with certain programs to have that down payment portion allocated for them. And so they can certainly buy right away in the first 4 to 6 months, but typically we find that clients want to wait because they want to see what area they want to go into. If they have kids, what schooling they want to be into, get familiar with a little bit of Toronto, all over different areas, so but typically you are able to buy right away.
Great. And when you call the last 10 years in Canada, the real estate market cold, medium, or hot?
Honestly, the last 10 years have been hot. I would say that it's been really hot. And I think the next 20 years are going to be even hotter. The way the immigration, as you mentioned, it's going to, grow. So I think it's a great place to be.
With some of my clients, I've
Yeah.
seen it easier to get a mortgage as a permanent resident as opposed to a work permit holder or a study permit holder, where that more permanent status will help with the banks, perhaps.
Absolutely. The permanent status helps with the banks because, there are programs with certain banks that, a non-Canadian citizen may be able to buy. But again, that gets a bit more complicated, but it's easier if you're a Canadian citizen, you're applying and then the rates make the big difference in monthly payments.
Understood. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on to some more nuts and bolts practical aspects, and that's the actual logistics of moving to Canada. And I'm happy to welcome Fran Roy to speak to that. Fran, please.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you my name is Fran. I'm the Director of Corporate Development for King's Transfer Van Lines. Moving obviously is you're leaving families behind, you're starting a new job. So there's a lot of things to factor when you're moving. First and foremost, I think taking the time to properly plan your move is key for a successful relocation. The survey is actually one of the most important steps of the move. It actually helps us see, I guess, the details of the move. Every household move is unique. All the key factors of every move is different. It's important for us to know what needs to be moved, what are the specifications of the origin and destination, what materials and equipment is needed to complete the move. These are just basics that the moving company will need to plan and move, to plan the move and provide you with the estimated price. The best and most accurate way to obtain this information is to meet with you in person. We either do this virtually or we do it in person, and you do an in-house survey, and it really prepares us to be able to do a successful move. When is the right time to prepare for a survey? I'd say as soon as you're aware that you're moving. Once you've confirmed what you need to move and the approximate time frame of your move, I'd say you'd be ready to schedule a survey. This usually takes place right after the sale of the home and preferably 4 to 6 weeks before you move your preferred move date. There are many things you need to know before you move. Before you move into Canada, it's important that you're aware of what the regulations are for importing goods and personal effects. There shouldn't be any charge for any import of personal effects. However, it's all in how it's declared at Canada Customs. Lots of people have alcohol when they move with their household goods, and they seem to feel that it's not an issue to bring alcohol in the container or in the truck. Alcohol is not a problem to import. However, there are restrictions and there are personal exemptions. All alcohol that's imported with your household goods must be reported on a permit application. This application can be done online with the LCBO. Your application cannot exceed more than 120 bottles of spirits and 1,200 bottles of wine and 250 containers of beer. You'd be surprised that people who are overseas in Europe, they actually come with quite the collection of wine. So this is an important information for customers to be aware of. The alcohol must have been owned by you and possessed by you for at least 6 months before you can bring it back to Canada. And if you've lived outside Canada for less than 5 years. You must have owned and possessed and used by you before you return to Canada if you have lived outside Canada for more than 5 years. So it depends on your status coming into Canada. Obviously, this would change. When you're a returning Canadian and you're bringing back your alcohol, it actually has to be returning to the same place where you came from. To prepare for goods coming into Canada. So coming into Canada, in order to not pay for duty or tax on your personal import, it's very important that you prepare a list before you leave the country that you're living in before you come into Canada. It's really recommended that you prepare a list of goods that you intend to bring into Canada as part of your household and personal effects. You would divide this list into 2 sections. I would say you would list the goods that you're bringing with you, because as you enter Canada, those items will need to be declared. And the next list are the goods to follow. So if you've hired a professional mover at this point, the goods to follow would be prepared by the moving company. They would prepare a moving inventory. And this list can be used as the list of goods that are to follow. The goods that arrive at a later date will only qualify for duty and tax-free import under your entitlement if they are on your original list. So example, if you're moving overseas or from any location into Ontario, and you have a list from the mover, but you've forgotten to include your vehicle, this could be a problem. So you have to make sure that every item that is to follow, even at a later date, is indicated on this list. It's strongly recommended you travel with your moving inventory, because as you enter Canada, this is when this declaration needs to be made. To import goods duty and tax-free, you must have owned and used the goods abroad prior to arriving into Canada. That's the most important part. In case of former residents, you must have owned and used your goods for at least 6 months before returning to the resuming residence in Canada. The 6-month stipulation is waived if you've resided abroad for more than 5 years. So really the key word is used. Used. Personal effects will not be subject to duty and tax. Upon arrival, you must give your list to the border officer at the point of entry into Canada, whether it's by land, air, or sea. Based on the goods that you submit, the officer will complete a BSF 186 personal accounting document, assign it a file number, and give you a stamped copy. This is like your free ticket for when the goods finally do arrive into Canada. You'll need to present that actual stamped document that you got at the border when your goods arrive, so you can make your personal declaration for free entry. Canada is a little bit complex on clearing goods. It's one of the only 2 countries, I think, in the world that you need to clear them in person. A lot of other countries, you let your agent take care of it, or whoever is taking care of your relocation to clear it on your behalf. Coming into Canada, whether you're a returning Canadian or coming in as a temporary status, it's imperative that all customers understand that as the individual relocating, that they are responsible to make themselves available to personally meet with a customs officer when their goods arrive. It's a very simple process. It's going to a counter, making your declaration, just providing the documentation to support your status in Canada, whether it's a work permit or proof that you've been living outside of Canada for X amount of time. They ask you a few questions about alcohol, tobacco, firearms, vehicles. These are all things that are subject to duty and tax. They stamp your paperwork, and then the mover is free to deliver.
Let me ask you a question. When clients come to you, is it after the survey that you're able to quote a fee for them in terms of moving them? And
Yes.
Is it a flat fee typically, or is it how does it work?
No, it's actually, there's quite a lot of steps to build an estimate for an international move. So after the survey, yes, it gives us a better opportunity to quote accurately. There are 3 factors for an international move. There's the origin services. So what do we need to pack? What do we need to pick up? Do we need any special services? Transportation to the port of departure. Then there's the sea freight or the air freight, whatever it is that transportation aspect is. And then there's the destination services, which is from the arrival of the port or to the terminal to the residence with final delivery. So there are several steps involved, and logistically right now it's challenging with what's happening in the world. It's I won't lie, we're doing it, but it's challenging.
Understood. Well, listen, I think, first of all, I want to thank each of our 6 experts for their insight. And I wanted to wrap up by asking each of them the same question, and I'll go first. And that is, for you, as you think of people coming to Canada, what is the best part of Canada for you personally? And when I think of it, I love the diversity and stability, but for me, economic opportunity in our country right now is wonderful. That stability gives us the ability to build our careers and build our wealth in a great environment. I'll go through the speakers in order. Nitin, when you think of Canada, what would you say is your favorite part or the best part of Canada?
I think you hit it on the head. The well, I love the diversity, the multiculturalism, the inclusive nature of our country, because now, we service a lot of US-based clientele, and all of a sudden inclusion and it has become this buzzword in the States, and yet in Canada, this has been our way of life for the last 20 years at least. So it's like you said, though, the opportunities here, it's still a relatively very safe country. The quality of life that it offers, yes, it can be expensive, and Toronto is among the more expensive cities in the world, but there are definitely tremendous opportunities to succeed in Canada and in Toronto, and enjoy a quality of life that is probably second to none.
Fantastic. Spence, in a word or two, what do you think, my friend?
Yeah, well, from a tax perspective, I would say stability. The tax system doesn't change dramatically as politicians change, so you generally know what to expect.
Fantastic. Maymar, from a wealth management perspective, one of the leading things in Canada?
Well, just on that, I think the financial stability of our banking system and our infrastructure has been known globally in good and bad times, and that's why we see the stability of the Canadian economy because of that. So that and healthcare and life. I mean, Canada is a great place to be, and we welcome everybody here.
Wonderful. Mo, maybe even from a personal level, as opposed to just mortgages, what you think of Canada in terms of a leading characteristic?
Honestly, I think you hit it perfectly, Andrew. So many places, the stability, the banking system, the economy on a personal note, people just around the freedom, the ability to move in peacefully and not be too worried. I think that's the key factor here in Toronto, and it's home.
Fantastic. And also on a personal level, Fran, anything you'd like to add?
I echo everything, actually. It's everything everyone said is pretty much what I was going to say. Diversity, the people, the land, the possibilities.
Yeah.
I'm very pro-Canada.
I see with our clients, even though it's an expensive country and it's a big thing, it's often a generational choice, opportunity for children and for grandchildren, and to build a better life. So on behalf of all the panelists, I hope you've enjoyed it, and we welcome you to Canada as you go, and we all have our areas of expertise, and we're here to assist. So I thank you for watching or attending, and I thank our panelists, and I wish you all a good day.